Okay, welcome to the Ruth Pedersen talks about the German election. Bundestagswahl German elections took place in end of September, and as we know, the changes in the party support were actually huge. There were definite shift of power in Germany, and we have today joy and privilege to have a local expertise on this issue from Ruth Pedersen Berlin office, managing partner Hendrik Hagemann, who will tell us about the election, what happened, why it happened, what's next, and you feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I will pick them up and every now and then pop into the Hendrik's presentation to present them as well. We have reserved about 1 hour for this event, and I hope you will find this useful. With no more words, herzlich willkommen, Hendrik.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wonderful. First of all, I have to really say how glad I am to see finally the legendary Helsinki office. I think we have a wonderful place here, and I think without further ado, my name is Hendrik Hagemann. I'm the managing partner of the Berlin office. We started last year during Corona. As many of you know, we were just two people back then. Now we are unter den Linden, close to Brandenburg Gate. Everybody is very, very much invited to come by to work from our office. And now we are close to 16, 18 people. And one, I think, very important and notable event was the German elections 10 days ago. And now I'm very happy to show you and share my presentation. I hope everybody can see it. So what happened? And I think let's start with a little teaser. The German elections, even the New York Times wrote, were probably quite boring. And the eventual winner, as the New York Times wrote, was somebody who would make even watching water boil exciting. So what has happened? And I think this is a slide which everybody should really digest and see. We had, after 16 successful years of Angela Merkel, with pretty much no unemployment, the economy is soaring, even Corona was managed very fine, as here in Finland, and also with a re-owned global leader, but still the CDU managed to fall down even below the Social Democrats. When you look at the Social Democrats, these 25.7%, that's actually, in our analysis, that's probably the maximum base of votes they can achieve. So the CDU lost it, and why did they lose it? And we could spend all webinar about it. There was a mixture out of a wrong candidate, also, I think a feeling in the population being, looking for something new, and then also a rift and divide within the electorate. You have in Western Germany the very strong Greens, and I will point out to them just in a second. And in Eastern Germany, people who are disgruntled with the CDU and who were turning again to our populist party, the AfD. On this slide, I think this is very important. You see the Liberals. This is here the yellow graph with 11.5%, and then the Greens. Both parties, for very much certain, will join a government either run by the SPD or run by the CDU. And I think this is the decisive slide. So what we will get, Germany always gets a coalition government. We don't do minority governments. It's also pretty much expected that the government will last for 4 years. That's why these kind of coalition agreements and negotiations are so important. And so the highest likelihood, what we see is the so-called traffic light coalition, a coalition led by the Social Democrats, by Mr. Scholz. I will come to him later. It would be the coalition of the winners, and I think one thing which we really have to point out, it would also mark a shift of Germany to the left to a certain point. You have the SPD, which would certainly raise the minimum wage. Yeah.
Sorry, Hendrik. Apparently, people are seeing only, and I am seeing only the title slide here, so we are not at the moment seeing the slide you are presenting.
Can you see it now?
Now it's you can try to start a slideshow from the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I have done that. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Coalition options with a traffic light and Jamaica.
Yeah, now we see it. Yes.
Okay, there must be a little delay.
Okay.
Yeah. So that what we call in Germany the traffic light coalition, a coalition run by the SPD, with strong Greens, with strong leftist fraction parts of the SPD and the Greens, actually would be a coalition which would be a little bit hedged with the Liberals on board, who obviously are a free market pro-business party. And this, the likelihood which we in this slide only have depicted at 60%, pretty much today can be decided. Yesterday was a last meeting of the Conservatives, the CDU with the Greens, and Pedersen reassessed that the likelihood is probably not only anymore at 60%, but probably at 80% and even rising. And it's also a coalition what the media really wants in Germany. It's as I said, the coalition of the winners. It would, and what would it mean? It would be in the policy fields. You could expect that this coalition, as I said, you know, that you would see a rise in the minimum wage. You would see that Germany really would move forward in means of reducing the CO2 emissions. You would very much likely see a massive spending spree starting in the budgets in April next year and in November next year, and investments in infrastructure, investments in the digital infrastructure. This coalition promises also to probably introduce a migration law resembling that of Canada, like a qualified migration law. You would see with this coalition also a move of Germany towards a decent banking union, a European banking union. That's something what many southern European banks are lobbying permanently, like BNP Paribas or the Dutch banks ING. And it would. I come later to the points pointing out in regard to what it would mean for foreign politics. There is still a little chance that a Jamaica coalition could be possible. That's the other coalition run by the CDU. And how could that happen? It could happen when somehow the negotiations with the traffic light coalition goes wrong, and which is possible. I mean, it's three parties who have to get along. This would be kind of the last shot Mr. Laschet, the candidate of the CDU, has. It would not really mean that much of different to the traffic light coalition out of a foreign view. Probably also many strong moves towards a decarbonization. The Greens are asking for an opt-out out of coal production much earlier than 2030, probably already in the mid or late 2020s. But it would obviously mean a little bit more conservative leveled coalition, where the Greens would be kind of the small partner with CDU and liberals who are who have traditionally run together many times our country. If these two kind of agreements fail, still Germany, and that might be a little bit different to Nordic countries, a grand coalition could also be possible. I just get the signal that again something is with the presentation wrong. I hope now you can see it.
I can come there to check the point. Just go on. We probably have to share the whole screen, but
yeah, I do that. All right.
Yep.
So here you have an overview of the candidates, and it's so these three, and there's another Green Party leader, would be the protagonist of the most likely outcome of coalition. As I said, a SPD-run coalition with the Liberals and the Greens. I want to point out to Mr. Scholz, who has been until now our Minister of Finance. He would certainly pose a decisive leader, a little different from Angela Merkel, as he probably would be much more proactive, also on the European arena. He has been a prime minister of the city-state of Hamburg, where he was leading a government also together with the Greens, which was, and this is also his character. He's extremely pro-large industry. He is strong aligned with the unions, but in regard to the big unions who dominate, in our German collaborative system, large companies such as Bayer, the car producers. He's a keen protagonist of Germany's export power and keeping Germany's kind of independence in regard that we obviously are part of the transatlantic alliance, but then to another point keep our tradeways open in order to trade with China.
We start we have a problem with this thing. You just yep. And now probably on Firefox. Oh no. And now, yeah. And now we go here, and now start.
Oh, wonderful! All right. Yeah. So this is Mr. Scholz. The man which is here depicted a little bit darker, that's Armin Laschet. He's responsible, obviously not him on his own, responsible for the massive failing of the CDU, and he is currently trying to keep the CDU together. There are a lot of backstabbers within the party, lots of jobs, lots of parliamentary mandates have been lost to this defeat on Sunday the 26th. But as this morning, one of Germany's leading newspapers, the Taz, wrote, he's not off the plate. There's still a chance that the Social Democrats, Greens and Liberals, as I said, don't come together. And then what would we expect from a Laschet chancellorship? He's from Aachen, so he's very, very close to the French border. He's a keen Europeanist in that regard, that he would probably oppose to be a weak chancellor who would allow very strong ministers to dominate their ministry areas. And also Mr. Laschet would very, very much put Germany in line with the European institutions, so everything works collaborative. While, and let me add that, while Mr. Scholz surely has more this approach of him and Mr. President Macron, or him and other European leaders driving forward the integration of the European Union and European issues. How does it work in regard to typical Germany? We do everything with committees, and then there's the subcommittees, and then there's a working group. I want to point out on this slide to two very important, also for everyone's and every policy interest. One thing is that in the last government, Germany has pretty much come to a kind, and it's an unwritten rule, but it has become a process in the last 20 years, which will certainly also be applied at this election, is that in the coalition negotiations, which we Pedersen expect to last until end of November, early December, and then by Christmas we have a new chancellor, that these coalition contracts, which are constructed by the working groups and then confirmed in these clearing rounds and then in the leadership, that this is kind of like a 106-pager. And that's the manual for our government for the next 4 years. And everything which is in this coalition contract, and this will be important also for everyone here in their own interest. So, for example, what the working groups write in for CO2 reduction, or for mobility, or when you look at foreign policy or defense measures, that's actually what the new government will work on. And if you are, for example, not in this coalition contract, or if in the coalition contract you are your issue is being mentioned as Germany wants to end, Germany wants to ban, then you certainly have a problem. That's the reason why right now like armies of public affairs consultants are leveling up in Berlin in order to influence and to try to prevent or inject certain issues. And this is obviously when like an external shock such as Corona hits, then the government is kind of diverging from this. But and that's the reason why when everybody of us talks to any with potential clients and mandates, you really have to. This is right now a time where many grand directions of Germany's politics, which then also affect obviously the politics in the European Union, are decided. And if you're not in the coalition contract until December, then you're really having a hard way to work on to get your issue raised in the next 4 years. This I think I already have talked about. This is that we expect the coalition contract and the new cabinet to stay until Christmas. One thing I think is something which you should not underestimate is that there sometimes is also a inter-party agreement needed. So what are the impacts? I think for especially I think as in other European countries, but also I think here in Finland, it's very interesting to see where will Germany change from its 16-year-old Angela Merkel style of foreign politics and European politics. And I think one thing here is super important to say is that the Greens, with 90% certainty, will join the government. And they, with also another 90% certainty, will then aim for the foreign ministry. And they have very different and decisive views on Russia and on China, starting and Turkey, two very important places for German foreign politics, which I think are also noted and watched here in Finland. Starting with Russia, while the two main candidates, Mr. Scholz and Mr. Laschet from the CDU and the SPD, both belong in their parties respectively to the school of thought that if Germany has positive or peaceful relations with Russia, that this is actually beneficial for the stability of Europe. I mean, it's an old antique we have in Germany since many years, centuries. The Greens don't share that view, and the Greens are clearly, if they come into government, if they have the foreign ministry, will run a very, very harsh and hard and critical line with Mr. Putin and the Russian government. Also, they have to really kind of move themselves when we talk about the current compromise with the Turkish government, but I expect there much more flexibility. And then when you look at China, many of the Green parliamentarians have their backgrounds in work with, Amnesty International. They sport the eventual Dalai Lama picture in their offices. So certainly you can expect that there will, from the Greens, be a drive within the government to become more critical, especially when you look at Tibet and the Uyghur situation. That, on the other side, can be kind of counterweight by Mr. Scholz, who is certainly a successor in Angela Merkel's line of keeping relations with China open, so European and German export trade can work on as it does now. I mean, as I mentioned, Mr. Scholz used to be the Prime Minister of the state of Hamburg. He's aware of how beneficial and how important international trade is for Germany and our European export-oriented partners, such as countries such as Finland, of course. The transatlantic partnership, I think, will be not much different than it is today. All three parties, be it run from the SPD or the CDU, will obviously, on the one side, bow to the importance of the transatlantic partnership. But certainly a Scholz government, and a Laschet government maybe, will not fall totally into the arms of what the United States are currently trying to have Germany or the European Union on their side 100% in this kind of new Cold War which is rising. I mean, there will be, especially when you look at, for example, the very, very, very critical view of the Greens for big tech, Facebook, Amazon, and Google and Apple to some extent, Apple not so much anymore, are a focus view of the Green Party, especially, but also Social Democrats and liberals from the civil rights, so all of everybody who's working with DMA or DSA in Brussels can expect a more critical view of the German new government. Talking about the European Union, I think that's very interesting, and that's probably also important here for Finland. You can expect, as I said, we expect with 90% a new German chancellor by Christmas. Then on January 1st, France will take over the EU presidency, and Germany will do very much, some people even say everything, that Emmanuel Macron will be re-elected in regard and to prevent an election of Marine Le Pen. So I really strongly believe, and you can already see signs, that there will be a kind of a renewal or strengthening of this Franco-German engine in the EU, a positive one. If the government is run by the Social Democrats like Mr. Scholz, he certainly, as he's very of himself very conscious, will ask the French president to be, they want to be partners. He certainly will not give him alone the floor, while Mr. Laschet would be a more transitioned, more moderating style of leader, and maybe even then probably the Macron presidency would benefit very much from it. One thing I think also should be pointed out, both, as well Mr. Laschet, but especially also Mr. Scholz, know Mrs. von der Leyen very well. They know Scholz is a friend of Frank Timmermans, so pretty much the EU, when you look at the Green Deal, Fit for 55, they're just waiting for the new government to form, and Germany will be a strong partner of the EU Commission to execute all what has been planned. And maybe one last point to point out is that what many people to a certain point underestimate is Germany's current view on Poland and Hungary. Here you can expect that the Greens obviously have and the Liberals and Social Democrats to a certain point as well they have a strong problem right now with the current peace government in Poland, which even under Angela Merkel was cooling off. If Donald Tusk, the PO, wins Poland, then I think you could even expect this partnership of France, Germany to be extended with Poland. What we in Germany would assess as a very positive driver on the continent. While if the peace gets re-elected, the new government certainly would have problems of kind of how do we get to terms with the Polish government, and that also means what to do with Hungary.
May I pop in for a question here? Esa asks, does the AUKUS deal, the Australian, UK, and US military deal influence the transatlantic partnership here? How do you see it?
Yeah, that's a very good and very, very important question. First thing, I think what many people do not know, when France was winning this U-boat deal, they actually defeated Germany, who was also bidding for the U-boats, and certain parts of the value chain, actually many German companies have been involved. The French are currently, and they certainly will restart that with the new government, are asking and pushing strongly for a European defense that we have to stay alone. This is something which Mr. Scholz, what the Germans, it doesn't matter actually if it's Mr. Scholz or Mr. Laschet. To a certain point, we will follow suit, but not totally. Germany will always keep their door open with the U.S. administration, with the transatlantic partnership, and this I think is very important. We already do not invest enough money into the NATO partnership. You know that there's a 2% GDP threshold. Germany has risen their investments in the army, but certainly not enough. And a liberal green SPD government will not invest strongly in our military in our security systems. Much to the sorrow of France, of the US, and also obviously of Poland and Lithuania and those countries. Don't expect any wonders from Germany in that regard. Mr. Laschet had this different. This is probably one of the few major differences between Mr. Laschet, the CDU, and the SPD, but it didn't win him any votes. So, and as the likelihood is very low that he will be elected. The French will try, but Germany to a certain point will say, yeah, we come, but then eventually we will not shut the door to the US. The only point which could change this would be if after Biden, and here we have, a 3-year kind of corridor, if Mr. Biden would be, a Trumpian Republican gets elected after Mr. Biden, I see then the potential that Germany, because the population is very, very critical, was already critical, and the media was critical on the Trump administration, that this will maybe incense the German government to kind of end the transatlantic partnership, but currently we don't see that. So what we have done, we have also in certain areas, energy, mobility, pointed out a little bit of, and this is very nitty-gritty, and I will, after this presentation, and please interrupt me for your questions, we'll share that. But I think these are like areas which will be affected, where Germany will do do a lot of changes which are needed. And just to flag this to you, large changes are also expected in the healthcare sector, in our pension system. Right now, there's a rumor that we might, and I'm sorry for saying that because we dub it the Swedish pension model. But coming to these points where we have prepared a little bit, which can also very happily be shared with clients or potential clients. One key point of investments, but also of regulatory changes, because this is one of the pet projects of the Greens, will be a vast change and investment in the mobility infrastructure in Germany. There's a talk of introducing, and I know this is hard for some of you who are enjoying the summer to drive on the German Autobahn, but there's a high likelihood that we eventually also will get a speed limit. Certainly, the Greens and also SPD, Liberal government, or a government with the CDU and the Greens, will invest massively into our railway system. There's even the talk of banning internal German flights, for example, Frankfurt to Berlin, Munich to Berlin. So this, I think, is a chance, especially if you want to take part, for Finnish companies, if you are part of this vast infrastructure investment and mobility changes, which will come with a certainty of 90%. Another point, and I think this is also very, very, very sometimes maybe even difficult to understand, is there is the so-called coal phase-out. And you know that Germany has already opted out of nuclear power, and we just did that, and next year the last nuclear power plant will be turned off. This same is also planned for a phase-out of coal, and the Greens and are pushing strongly that this should be done even before 2030. You now asking, okay, so how do you get your electricity and heat? So you're turning to gas from the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Yes, but actually no. The Greens have a decisive plan to invest so heavily into the electrification through renewable sources that they are believing, and this will be certainly a kind of raison d'être for the new government, independent if it's run by CDU or SPD, that even gas is not needed anymore for our power production. If this is it, I mean, currently the amazing rises in prices when you look at the gas and energy prices while we speak, which are happening parallel to the coalition negotiations. If this kind of counterfeits it, could be, but overall, if anyone has, and I mean, for example, we know of Finland's stellar company Fortum with their Uniper investment, they certainly having right now I would say a problem, but doubts and issues, because what has been planned before in regard to coal and gas plants might be heavily reversed when the new government is pushing for much stronger and harsher measures. And just one point also, maybe lastly, the Liberal Party, it's a party of people who, it's a party more of people who are like, dentists or lawyers or auditors or so on. They are very, very open for technological innovations, but there certainly is, they do not help the large power or energy industry or oil industry industry in regard to sometimes people ask, could they act as a kind of a hedge against two strict plans of SPD and Greens. Don't expect wonders from them. Yeah, I mean, this points it, I think, extremely well out. Two things, I think, especially out of the Finnish view, are interesting. And when we look at this slide, and also in regard to what I have said already. One is that Germany pushes strong, and the new government will push even stronger on the decarbonization of our industry. But Mr. Scholz and the government, they don't want that Germany deindustrializes. On the contrary. To say the German word, the Zauberwort is that hydrogen will play an essential role. But Germany already has decided, classical move from us, that we rule out many things before it's even starting, has already ruled out blue and gray hydrogen. So only green hydrogen will be allowed and applicable for this decarbonization of the industry. And right now, green hydrogen out of biomass is also not eligible for that. So there already you see some conflicts on the horizon. Talking about biomass or bioenergy, because I mean this is something certainly maybe also of interest here in Finland. That is something what the Greens very much, and also large parts of the SPD, do not like. I think, or we know that it comes back from the days when our heavily industrialized agri industry was, planting the whole country with corn and rape in order to use it for biofuels. Germany has this. This is one of the few cultural wars we have in Germany. The future of our agriculture, though it doesn't in our whole industry, it only has a part of 1 or 2% of GDP. But this is something which can also halo up to Brussels if the new government, especially run by SPD with the Greens, becomes too strict in that regard. And NGOs are lobbying massively in Berlin that the German government has a very, very negative and strict view on biomass as a source for energy or hydrogen. Last but not least, and then I open the floor for the questions, and also our presentation is over. We have also looked at the tech and digital politics, and I mean, we're very, very happy if somebody has a certain question also for other areas of industry. We are always there to you can please contact us, call us or mail us, and then we're very happy to do the same. But here, I think this is also important to see that also here, because this is in relation and in connection to what's going on in Brussels, you can expect a new German government, independent if it's run of CDU or SPD, to be very, very keen and strict on the issue of the digital, of the DMA regulation, and to a certain point also when you look, and I think Facebook is not helping itself with the current publications of the DSA. There has actually been a German motion which was kind of acting as a role model, and so big tech is not as, I mean, there's an ambivalent view of the SPD. They look at, obviously, when you look at companies such as Volt or Voy or others of the geek economy, they have a strict eye, or neobanks, they have a strict eye on the workers' labor rights for these new industries. While here in this field, pretty much only the Liberal Party can act as a hedge against this kind of too much regulation, too strict approaches, which, as I said, I think many times in this presentation, also can have a halo up on the European. I mean, this I think is something which is very important. And then I pretty much will stop with this presentation and open the questions. The new government will have so many MEPs in Brussels. Mrs. von der Leyen knows both Mr. Laschet and Mr. Scholz very, very well, as Mr. Timmermans do. So you can expect a keen pro-European Union Germany, which will kind of communicating, as we say in German, will work hand in hand with the EU Commission. So for Finnish interest, being going to Berlin and if you want to influence certain developments in the EU, or you want to find out what Berlin thinks, especially after Brexit, has become, and also with the new impulse from the new government, will probably become even more necessary and important. All right, I stop here, and I will go back to our favorite slide, the one with the different coalition options, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Hendrik, for the enlightening and great show. I especially love the slides with the pluses and minuses in different.
Everybody loves it.
It's really, it's really like illustrative. We don't at the moment. We don't have any questions from the audience, but please feel free to write them in the chat or any comments you have. But maybe I'll start with the digital issues and digitalization issues, or actually digitalization and industrial policies. How do you see future public investments, first in digital transformation and digitalization of Germany, and how it depends on different coalitions or possible coalitions? And secondly, how do you see this compared to the possible public investments to the traditional industry? Maybe especially I'm interested now in automotive industry, which is like a cornerstone of at least Western German economy, more or less, and the transformation of the traffic.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and because I mean, Germany it's as every one of you might know, and if not, I invite you to visit us in Berlin, and then I drive you out of the city just for like 10 minutes, and we don't have any access to internet. Ruth Pedersen pays for 300 megabits because it's the monopoly, 1,100 euro a month for the internet connection unter den Linden. So to come to the point, Corona has shown what a digital laggard we are in Germany, especially our bureaucracy. I mean, you can order an Uber, you can buy stuff on Amazon if you have a grid and you live in a city. But when you have to do any kind of interaction with the authorities, it's all done by paperwork and fax pretty much. So there you can expect a massive investment, but and that has been already being done in the past. They will dollop huge amounts of money, pour it onto it. The question will be how smart the German government, and will they let private companies and private entities use that money to finally digitalize Germany, or do they do it as we like to do it in Germany? We'll give the money to some public authority to invest it, and then you probably can expect only a meager outcome. What happens with the traditional industry? Very interesting. I mean, Mr. Lindner, the flamboyant leader of the Liberal Party, has just said 2 days ago that he thinks the German car industry, I mean, when we look at their revenues and profits, it's actually in such a great shape that it doesn't need any substitutions anymore. that certainly is being a little bit different seen by the SPD and the CDU to a lesser extent, because the SPD has, and Mr. Scholz especially, he wants to reignite the great relations already Gerhard Schröder had to the union leaders and workers' councils leaders of Volkswagen, Mercedes, and BMW. I mean, they certainly will have a strong say. And it also will a little bit depend for the next government on how you mentioned Western Germany. I mean, especially in southwestern Germany, how this transition of people losing their jobs in the car supplies, because I mean, like at Bosch or Mahle or Continental, what kind of new jobs will these people get? I mean, if unemployment of these very well-paid people rises substantially, which it has not done right now, until now, the transformation has been didn't have any effects on the job market. You might see the SPD very, very quick, tapping on the hands of the Greens and then saying, no, we need, they need longer times. I mean, one keyword is, does Germany really wants to ban the combustion engine, or will it slowly stay on the sideline and look that the industry does it kind of for itself? Yeah. I hope that answered your question. If there are no further questions, then I would say, I
had a mic off. And you can actually turn the screen share now off. We are seeing your
the root Pedersen universe, yeah.
Yeah, great. Another question about climate and energy politics and like interest groups outside the parliament and how they are affecting at the moment to the negotiations and to the parties, and how responsive parties are toward different views on energy and climate politics. For example, trade unions or interest groups of industries or environmental pressure groups.
Yeah, that's also, it's one of the most debated, and this is an excellent question also, I mean, really coming to the point. The thing is, the Green Party has such a closeness to the NGOs, these environmental NGOs. I mean, pretty much, I would say, we kind of 30% of the members in parliaments have started their careers at or 40% at environmentalist NGOs. I mean, this is kind of a complex where the NGOs now have their party in parliament. I mean, they have that since the 1980s, and now in government. So they certainly will. They have a say now, on the government benches, and they will be in the heart, on the table of power. The unions, you would expect, would have that too with the Social Democrats. The unions had a difficult time in the 16 years of Angela Merkel, because for many of these years, I mean, and there are a lot of union members who vote the Conservatives in Germany. I mean, this is not, they have a strong, Christian workers wing within the CDU. So that they will readjust, and I think, and we believe that will level it out. But yes, I mean, as all of you who are watching also European politics and see how our Green 25 MEPs behave in Brussels, this certainly will be something to watch out. But there's also the way how to level it. You can, if you would advise the client, you can always say, okay, here you have the NGOs directly at the government table. You can go do the industrial union way over the SPD, or you obviously go to the Liberal Party, which has a soft non-NGO, point. I mean, they are also lobbied by certain or influenced by certain interest groups, but not the NGOs so much. I hope that explains it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Then just a couple of questions about like power politics and so on. Maybe you already when you talked about the possible coalitions, you touched this question a bit, but I'd like to pose a straightforward answer. Like 4 years ago, there were negotiations on the Jamaica coalition as well, and it fell. And at least the story what is told is to the controversies between Greens and FDP. At least their like economic policies weren't compatible at that moment. What is different now, and is it easier for Liberals and Greens to agree on issues when the third party is SPD than its union? This is also again a super question, because this is pretty much what drives me and the Pedersenin Berlin team since the last 10 days. Mistakes of 2017, for those who are like Germany policy aficionados, know that they already tried to form in Jamaica a CDU Green Liberal government back then, and it failed bitterly because the negotiations got offhand. There were a lot of leakages, people did not get along, and then eventually we ended up in another grand coalition. We do not expect, or I do not expect, Pedersenin Berlin does not expect that this repeats itself. The protagonists are different. They have learned from the mistakes back in 2017. There's a lot at stake. I mean, you know, if for example the Liberals don't deliver this time, then I mean, everybody wants to have the juicy, the fine leather seats and the BMWs when you're ministers and share the power with Germany. You usually bring your people, party people into the ministries. There's a lot of jobs there to share, probably the same resembling here in Finland. But it's not certain. I mean, there can be. I mean, Mr. Scholz, for example, has a track record on being very bully. Like he was a bully when he was governing with the Greens. So the Hamburg Greens are, pretty much every day in the media. Watch out for Mr. Scholz. Watch out for Mr. Scholz. Mr. Laschet certainly will be a weak negotiator who will pretty much give in to everything what the Greens and the Liberals want. But just one last point, and then I. Also in regard to time, this is a festival for everyone who likes game theory, because this time the Greens and the Liberals actually are negotiating prior with themselves, and they get along very, very nice. So we have like kind of a reverse situation maybe in Germany, that these two smaller parties kind of come to an agreement, which looks like that today will negotiate again, and then just choose one of the larger partners. Something which for the self-esteem of CDU and SPD, it's unusual. All right. Excellent. Thank you, Hendrik. We have spoken our time. This was really interesting, really enlightening piece of information for this morning. And thank you for everyone attending this and listening to this. And we hope you everything good for the beginning autumn, and for Hendrik, good. Have a nice day in Helsinki today.
Maybe one thing to add. First of all, I mean, thank you so much for this opportunity. I know that everybody has a busy schedule. I will be around until tonight or tomorrow, and I also have brought with me Zoomin, our energy expert, who actually knows much more about what I just have said and Lars is also there, so don't hesitate, come by, just grab us, and you can also have bilateral, can ask us any kind of bilateral question. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.